Welcome everyone to the Family Caregiver Center's 5th year celebration. My name is Abby Wyrather, and I am the center's manager. And we are so very happy that you have all joined. Excited to welcome special guest speaker, author, and dementia expert Judy Cornish for the second half of tonight's celebration. So I'm going to ask you a few things here before we get started. First of all, if you all could mute yourselves, that would be wonderful. That'll make sure that we can hear all of these wonderful speakers that we have joining us today. The other thing I'm going to ask is if you have any questions, any comments as we go along, you should see at the bottom of your screen the ability to chat. So feel free to use that chat and type in any reactions or questions you have as we move along. The other thing is I asked for your patience. This is new for all of us. Kathy was reflecting before we started about how we wish we could be in person with you all to celebrate. So thank you for your patience at the beginning of this celebration. So to start off tonight, we would like to open in prayer. So I would like to welcome Sister Susan O'Connor, who has been there supporting the center since the beginning. Sister Susan has been a Sister of Mercy for over 50 years. She is actually retiring at the end of this year from her position as the Vice President of Mission Integration at Mercy. We are so grateful for everything that she has done, and we wish her all the best moving forward in the future. So Sister Susan, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
I did. Hello, everyone, and I want to add my congratulations to the Caregiver Center for their 5th anniversary, and I would offer this prayer. And so we pray. Loving God, as we gather on this December evening, we pause to give thanks for all those who dreamed large enough and long enough to make the Family Caregiver Center a reality all those many years back. We celebrate the comfort and courage that the center has provided to all those people called to do the sacred work of caregiving. We know that all those involved with the center, staff, volunteers, caregivers, care receivers, and a myriad of Mercy co-workers, walked a path that was both exciting and challenging. We pray in thanksgiving that the center has become a beacon of hope in our community and beyond, so that no one feels alone or unsure of their caregiving journey. Tonight, dear God, our hearts are full of gratitude for all the good that has brought us to this 5th anniversary celebration, and we look forward to all the good that is yet to come. Bless those who work to create a space worthy to hold the dream of all that this center has been and will be. Amen.
Amen, and thank you, Sister Susan, for that lovely prayer. 5 years ago, after the center opened, I pinched myself every morning when I came to the center to make sure that I wasn't dreaming. And tonight, I'm again pinching myself to make sure that we really are celebrating the center's 5th anniversary. So I'm speaking tonight from the privileged position as director of the center. Dave Good, my husband, lived for 12 years with dementia before he died 5 years ago, and I was his caregiver. And because of his dementia, I met Tim Charles, the president and CEO of Mercy Medical Center, who asked if I was interested in helping create a family caregiver center. So Dave Good's dementia and Tim Charles' innovative thinking has led to this celebration tonight. I've had the opportunity to live with purpose for the last 5 years and to work with you who have joined our celebration tonight. Mercy staff, donors, volunteers, caregivers, those living with chronic conditions, and the community organizations with whom we have a close working relationship. Everyone working together has led to this center's success. The center has had contact with 1,206 caregivers to date. And so every day, in addition to giving thanks for Dave and Tim and the people that I just mentioned, I also give thanks for the friends, the neighbors, and the family members who have supported me as I was caring for Dave and as I have co-created this center with Tim. You've provided emotional support, you've done things at the center, and you've made financial contributions. So in that initial center video that we just saw, Tim Charles prophetically said something like, and this is my paraphrase, what you see today may look very different from what you will see a year from now. So in many ways, the center is just the same, but we've also pivoted. The changes that have happened are due to what we've learned from doing and from caregiver and volunteer feedback, and we intend to keep that process up. So what is the same and what is different? Well, the 15,485 caregivers and other visitors who have come through the door have been respectful, and the center really still looks like new. The Lynn County Master Gardeners have added plantings outside, and we have a lovely picnic table. It is one part of a larger patio plan that took pause when COVID-19 happened. So Kathy Craffle replaced Mary Rink as the office coordinator 3 years ago, and 2 years ago, Abby Weyerrather was hired as the center manager. So we moved from caregiver coaches to engagement specialists, and we've had 3,278 one-on-one interactions with caregivers that provided emotional support and connection to resources. Almost 1,200 educational sessions on a variety of topics have been held, and 4 types of support groups are now offered. We started with the male caregiver coffee, which started meeting weekly after COVID started, and the drop-in support group for both genders. And then we added the Mindful Caregiver book study support group and the Transitions Out of Caregiving support group. Respite is very important to caregivers, and today the center offers access to various types. The volunteer companion respite will again be active once COVID-19 is over, and the center's hourly respite continues for caregivers who qualify financially. The resource lending library has grown to over 220 titles, and in 2018, we held the inaugural Together in Song Chorus concert. So pre-COVID, for 3 very successful seasons, the chorus brought together people living with chronic conditions, including dementia, their care partners, and volunteer singers. And the concerts filled the Halligan Center at Mercy. The center reached out to St. Paul's United Methodist Church and helped a group of very dedicated volunteers begin the Connections program for individuals living with early stage dementia in September of 2019, and that provided participants with purpose and meaning in their lives and gave caregivers a break. It too has been suspended due to COVID. The center's kitchen cabinet, the planning team, continues as a guiding force. Our strategic planner continues her work with the center, and a comprehensive planning guide for caregivers was finalized in early 2020 and was used in a 3-series educational event that's been repeated 3 times. And we've published a monthly newsletter since August of 2016. Whew. All this and more has been provided by the support of the staff of many departments of Mercy Medical Center, the center staff, and the more than 167 volunteers who have been involved since the center opened and who have given more than 34,000 hours. We started in 2015 with just 28 volunteers. So moving ahead, the center will pilot an online community. In 2021, a second location for the center will be established within the Chris and Susie DeWolf Family Innovation Center for Aging and Dementia at Hallmark Village. And Judy Cornish will train family caregivers to interact more effectively with people living with dementia using her Dawn method. So we receive spontaneous notes from caregivers all the time. One wrote to us and said, "Words cannot express how grateful I was the day I walked out of the center. Although I have wonderful friends and family, I felt so alone. Not only was it therapeutic to tell my story today to someone who understands, but I finally feel that there is hope." So I think it's fair to say that the Family Caregiver Center, thanks to everyone, is making a difference in the lives of caregivers. Our next speaker is Lori Rusha, the president of the Mercy Medical Foundation, and we're grateful for the funding that the foundation provides through its donors. Lori?
Hi. The Family Caregiver Center operates on total generosity of donor and volunteer support. It's a cause that resonates with me and so many of you, our donors. You know the importance of having a resource like this in our community. Many donors have shared that they're caregivers themselves because they know firsthand the value of assistance and support that they have received at the center. Many of you give out of appreciation and because you want to ensure that the center is there for others. Donors often give in honor or memory of their loved ones, and through the foundation, the Family Caregivers Center has received an average of 161 gifts per year since opening in 2015. In total, donors have contributed nearly $2.6 million in only 5 years. Donor contributions were instrumental in the creation of the center, and they are vital, truly essential to its ongoing operations, as well as the new satellite location to be held at Hallmark Village. This opportunity to expand services requires greater operational expense, and we hope that you will consider an investment when the time is right. We in the foundation and the Family Caregivers Center staff and volunteers are incredibly grateful for your support. Please know that every dollar you give makes a difference in someone's life. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And I want to introduce the video that we're going to see next. In 2018 in Chicago, the American Hospital Association gave the Caregivers Center an award of excellence for volunteers and community benefit. And the video that you are about to see was used as part of my 2-minute acceptance speech.
For those people who are dealing with very difficult situations at home, with life-changing experiences, we do become their world. And the joy of being able to share gifts that I have, the experience that I have, all that Nick and I have lived through with others, brings me great joy. Someone might not get it if they were simply paid employee. I think makes a huge difference in terms of understanding, in terms of connection, in terms of identifying with needs.
I feel like I belong. I feel like everybody there cares. Their stories are as important to me as mine are to them. They've already experienced what I'm experiencing. They give me confidence. They help me deal with any issues that I'm dealing with. I can't imagine my life without having that tool to go to.
I'm Carol Butts.
And I'm Laura Sagers, and we're going to do a quick run through of some of the highlights we've experienced during these past 5 years that we've been privileged to be part of the Family Caregiver Center.
Laura, can you remember how we held our first planning meetings wherever we could find spare office space in the hospital? Then one day, Kathy said that Mr. Charles had an office site that was available, and she invited us to go look at it with her. It was so exciting to walk through what is now the Caregiver Center, envisioning what rooms could go where. And then a few months later, the vision became reality as the Family Caregiver Center of Mercy took shape with new walls, paint, and furniture. One of the next milestones was hiring an office manager who provided additional support in the center. And then a few months later, in December, we had that exciting inaugural open house with the Family Caregiver Center filled with people celebrating the culmination of a dream. Since then, the planning team, now known as the Kitchen Cabinet, continues to hold regular meetings to brainstorm educational events and provide guidance to Kathy and Abby. The Men's Coffee was established with Rob Cook and Dr. Galbraith, forming a strong group of male caregivers. And I began facilitating the drop-in support group with the help of other members of the kitchen cabinet. Countless wonderful caregivers have rotated in and out of that group. And Laura, you and I also began a 10-week book study of the Mindful Caregiver book.
And after the first few book groups, the participants didn't want the group to end. So a support group was created and it has been ongoing since. And we've attended a multitude of award events where Kathy and the Family Caregiver Center was acknowledged for the innovative work. And Carol, wasn't it exciting to travel to St. Cloud, Minnesota, where we were able to share our knowledge and experience with providers even in another state? Abby was hired as the center manager to add additional support and expertise to the work that was already being done. The Connections Respite Group was started at St. Paul's Methodist Church, which was great support to both caregivers who needed a short break, as well as their loved ones who had an opportunity to develop important connections and friendships. The Together in Song Chorus was started, and the joy of the concerts is something that won't soon be forgotten. One of the most recent major accomplishments was the completion of our comprehensive planning guide and subsequent presentations of the valuable material that it contains. This was a culmination of 2 years of work and multiple hours. In March, COVID arrived, but that couldn't stop the center. We've continued support groups and education via Zoom. All of this is thanks to the dedicated staff and a multitude of committed volunteers who have served 1,200 caregivers and counting.
Yeah, my name is Tom Brenham, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words about my experience with the center. I've been attending the Family Caregiver Center's Men's Coffee for about 2 years, and I found the center to be extremely helpful and a great resource to becoming a better caregiver. I belong to the Men's Coffee Group, which and I have also used one-on-one counseling. The Men's Coffee Group meets for 1 to 2 hours each Tuesday and before Zoom, and COVID-19 came along and we went to Zoom every week. Seemed to be a better solution. We were enjoying our meetings so much that it seemed like 1 week was plenty long because we had so much to talk about. And we have two great leaders, Dr. Bill Galbraith and Rob Cook, who do a great job of not only leading, but also stimulating the meetings and sharing information. From one of our basic tenets, which says what's said in the meeting stays in the meeting, we have really become a close-knit group of caring men sharing our difficulties, our problems, our successes, our solutions, our practices, our ideas. And we found the inputs that coming from others to be extremely valuable in helping us to become a better caregiver. Members of the group change from time to time, but attendance is very regular by most of us. And I think that shows the value that we're finding in the meetings and educating us and finding new ways to improve our caregiving. We are a somewhat diverse group, although we get joked, those of us that are engineers, about cause and effect and other things like that. But I think this diversity also makes the discussions especially effective, whether it's dealing with a technology item or how to respond to an emotional situation. In fact, subject matter of our meetings covers the gamut, not strictly pure caregiving even. We talk about COVID-19 a lot and what it means and how to be safe, or insurance, or garden produce. We have a member that shares to the other members of the group summer plentiful harvest. And many other subjects. Anybody that has a subject, we'll talk about it, and we find it most educating. We also share information about books, and frequently it comes forward by one of the members finding a book that is especially useful. The center, of course, has a library with many good books to check out, but we found a few exceptional books, including the two by Judy Cornish that have stimulated caregiving improvement. I've always felt that a goal for caregiving is to make every day the best it can be and find a joy in it. And I think the Family Caregiver Center has helped tremendously in me helping for that goal. And as Dr. Alan Power has said, we all need mentors. And I've found that the Family Caregiver Center and Men's Coffee Group to be a joy in meeting those mentor needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So I'm Tim Charles, and In the few minutes I have, I'd like to visit with you about Hallmark Village. I'm going to begin by speaking to the power of an idea whose time has come, coupled with generosity, driven intention, and dedicated, persistent effort. The idea of the Family Caregiver Center of Mercy was inspired by another resource for caregivers, but as is the case with innovation, has been taken in a whole new direction to an entirely new level. Most importantly, it became the context within Mercy that enabled consideration of an even bolder transformative vision, a new senior living community aligned with what will be known as, due to their generosity, the Chris and Susie DeWolf Family Innovation Center for Aging and Dementia. The center is dedicated to advancing beyond, and some would say disrupting, the status quo in providing environments that elevate the quality of life deserved by all that are aging, but most importantly in this case, those with dementia. The center's role is to drive further discovery of groundbreaking ideas, coupled with generosity, driven by intent, and dedicated, persistent effort. So what is Hallmark Village? It is a 42-acre senior community located near the intersection of Avenue C and Tower Terrace Road, with 226 residences organized around a continuum of levels of care and service: independent living, assisted living, memory care, nursing care. It is a $74.6 million investment in our community. The villagers will be engaged in an inclusive community. What does that mean? From my perspective, it is a community that roots out the inequities and implicit and explicit disparities to accessing a dynamic, elevated quality of life for those simply aging, but again, most importantly, those with dementia and their caregivers, spouses, partners, loved ones. We don't have to search very far for the evidence of these inequities and disparities in our daily lives and experience within existing communities, senior communities. Hallmark Village will replace the existing Hallmark Center on Mercy's hospital campus. The current residents will have the opportunity to move to a new contemporary home. Like Hallmark today, there will be provisions made for the poor. And in contrast to Hallmark today, it will not simply be privately funded, but will access federal and state funding sources. Most importantly, it will be a demonstration project, a model. The foundation of the Innovation Center has been laid already and is a resource to the current Hallmark Senior Center and future Hallmark Village programming, as well as its villagers. It will house, for example, Mercy's Memory Diagnostic Clinic, a day center, research resources, and a living classroom. It will also serve the community at large and our region. Any senior service or resource intent upon innovating, advancing the training and education of their professional teams, wishing to join the journey of discovery will be welcome. It will be a center dedicated to prepare the professional caregivers to better meet the needs of their aging patients. It will investigate cutting-edge innovations that enable aging in place, aging with dementia in one's primary home, with estimates of 1 in 3 persons developing some level of cognitive impairment in the course of our increasing lifespans. This is a practical necessity, as we likely won't be able to accommodate the entire population in communities such as Hallmark Village. The Hallmark Village project will break ground next spring and be completed by the conclusion of 2022 or potentially 2023. Nonetheless, the DeWolf Family Innovation Center will open sooner, as we have acquired the former Presbyterian Echo Hills Church, which was adjacent to the site and is now incorporated into the master plan. And did I mention it will be the site for the first of what I hope will be many satellites of the Family Caregiver Center of Mercy, the anniversary of which we celebrate this evening. And now I would like to share a video that we're using in our philanthropic campaign, raising the necessary funds to support the work of the Innovation Center. Thank you and Merry Christmas.
We noticed some significant changes in Tony's personality about 2016. He was not as social as he used to be. He was kind of apathetic. He didn't engage in the family as much. He didn't seem as concerned about things he maybe should have been concerned about. So we got the diagnosis in January of 2017. Tone was textbook FTD, frontal temporal dementia. And from then on, we started our care with Mercy Memory Clinic and have had nothing but absolute wonderful experiences with them. They're just absolutely amazing and have really helped guide us on this journey, because there's so much to dementia. There's so many moving parts, and for a family, and they have really helped us through that.
As our population ages, more older adults are living with complex chronic conditions, including dementia, which claims the life of 1 in 3 older adults and is the 5th leading cause of death in our state. Today's options for senior living are inadequate, and we cannot be blinded to increasing needs of older adults in the coming years. That's why Mercy has partnered with Presbyterian Homes and Services, a Minnesota-based nonprofit specializing in senior living, to develop Hallmark Village, the first inclusive senior living community in Iowa. In an inclusive senior living community, everyone works together to meet basic needs, so all residents feel valued and can live with dignity, engage actively, and contribute to their community. Hallmark Village will replace the current Hallmark. It will offer 3 housing options: independent, residential, and nursing, and will allow residents, those living with and without dementia, to age in place, to retain their autonomy, to feel secure in their surroundings. All will find meaning and purpose in a community that feels like home.
I need to know that Tony is somewhere where he can do what he wants to do, where he can live his best life. I want Tony's next journey to be where the kids feel they can walk in. It's home. It's his home. You can walk in whenever you want. You can feel the love by the staff, I don't want it to look sterile. I want it to feel home. And I know that that's what Mercy will do. They will make it home.
Hallmark Village will also include the Chris and Susie DeWolf Family Innovation Center for Aging and Dementia. This center will discover, evaluate, and implement best practices in aging and dementia, and will be home to Mercy's Memory Clinic, a geriatric medical clinic, an adult day center, the Research and Training Institute, and a second location of the Family Caregiver Center. Hallmark Village and the Innovation Center will be the hub of research, training, and education that will offer residents in the community an entirely unique experience.
When the Sisters of Mercy founded Mercy Medical Center in 1900, it was to meet the need for more health care in this area. Now, 120 years later, one of the greatest unmet needs in this community is our understanding of aging and dementia.
The Sisters of Mercy are pleased to see our legacy of meeting unmet needs continue through the Innovation Center for Aging and Dementia. Our prayer is that all who use the Innovation Center will lead full and meaningful lives.
For someone in the caregiver role and living this life, it's such a relief and blessing to know that people are trying to build a facility that will meet every need we could possibly have.
Hallmark Village is a $74.6 million investment with cost shared between Mercy and Presbyterian Homes. The Live with Purpose campaign will raise $8.5 million. A generous $2 million lead gift from the Chris and Susie DeWolf family for the Innovation Center for Aging and Dementia has already been received.
No startup or medical breakthrough happens without the support of generous benefactors, people who are convinced that a specific initiative and the team behind it will change the world in truly transformational ways.
We strongly believe that Hallmark Village is such an initiative, and we sincerely hope that you will join us in making it a reality. We would like to share with you what sets this project apart. The Innovation Center for Aging and Dementia will disrupt the status quo, using research to inform best practices and lead to a higher quality of life for residents, non-residents utilizing these services, and caregivers.
Hallmark Village will be a community that feels like home and will reflect the way people lived prior to diagnosis. It will also provide accessible on-site medical care with the Mercy touch you've come to expect.
But most importantly, Hallmark Village will give those who are older and those living with chronic conditions such as dementia and their families an opportunity to live with purpose.
We invite you to join us on this journey and invest with us as we innovate and set the new standard of care for our loved ones.
And now I'm thrilled to welcome Judy Cornish to this celebration and to introduce her to you. Judy is a geriatric care manager and an elder law attorney who has spent the last 6 years working with families and people living with dementia. She lives in Idaho. She is the author of the Dementia Handbook and Dementia with Dignity, 2 books that led us to seek her out and talk with her. I like what I read in the Dementia Handbook, but when I read the Dementia with Dignity, I knew I was connecting with someone who really understood how to relate to a person living with dementia. Thinking back about my interactions with Dave, I could see how Judy's methods would have enhanced my relating to him. Her words resonated, they made sense, and her concepts were easy to understand. Judy wants to help caregivers connect with and relate to people living with dementia in a way that preserves their dignity and speaks to their strengths. Judy is smart, articulate, compassionate, kind, caring, and eager to share with us. And so here is Judy to present the gifts of dementia.
Well, thank you, Kathy. I hope I can live up to that. I don't know if I'm that eloquent. And thank you so much. I'm just so thrilled to be able to work with all of you there at Mercy Medical and to be able to take part in the Family Caregiver Center. It just thrills me. And as you know, it's something that's very close to my heart. You'll have to bear with me because right now what we need to do is have me share my screen. So I am going to click my way through, and I have no idea whether you can still see me or not. You can. Kathy is nodding, and now you should be seeing my screen. Yes, I'm getting some nods. Okay, so, you know, this is what I'm going to talk about with you tonight. I imagine you probably have not had too many people talk to you about gifts and dementia in the same sentence, let alone as a topic. That my introduction to dementia was much like each of yours, or many of yours, where you hadn't planned on having dementia enter your life. And it took quite some time for you to feel that maybe you got your feet under you. For me, the let me just start. And what I'll do to begin with is give you a little bit of a summary of how I ended up working with dementia, because I'm not medically trained. I'm not a caregiver by training or a social worker. I'm an attorney. And it was back in 2010, it was actually a decade ago, when I arrived in Moscow, Idaho. I was looking for a small town that had mountains nearby. And what I wanted to do was just practice elder law part-time and be semi-retired. And as I was getting settled and getting to know my neighbors, the daughter of the woman across the street dropped in one evening. And she said, you know, we're going to have to put mom in a care facility because she just keeps losing the car. She's getting too forgetful, and none of us live in town, and we just can't have this. And I'd just been getting to know her, and I knew she loved her home. And so I said, well, don't make her move. I'm not working. I can do my errands with her, and I can just keep an eye on her, and I can help. I'd be glad to. And I think it was 2 weeks later, within 2 weeks, I had phone calls from 5 other families, and I was checking in and looking after 6 other elders who were living there in that small town, and living with increasing forgetfulness, maybe with or without a diagnosis of dementia at that point in their lives. And I was just trying to help. And very quickly, I realized that I didn't have a background in this, but by spending time with people, and this is what was the great opportunity for me, small town, and 2 universities, many ranchers, business people, professors, housewives, artists. I had such an assortment of people that I was able to spend time with. And so my education began, my education in dementia. It was feet on the ground and trying very hard. I remember at the beginning there being very concerned that I didn't hurt anybody or harm anybody, because I was just a lawyer. What did I know about dementia? But from the start, I was learning from the masters, and what my neighbors, my friends, my clients taught me was that, well, there were the 3 truths that I shall share with you tonight, but that we can provide care that is supportive and isn't as painful for the caregiver or for the person who's experiencing dementia. We just need to understand what the strengths are, what people lose, what they don't lose. And so the little book, the Dementia Handbook, is brief, short. I wanted it to fit in somebody's briefcase or purse, be easy to take along, read quickly. And I just outlined the pattern that even though all of these people, they came from every possible walk in life, and highly educated people, people with no education at all, every type of dementia that you can imagine. And yet there was, if I looked at dementia from the perspective of how it changed people, how it affected how we feel, what it feels like to get dementia, and how it changes how we're able to function. Well, then I didn't have to be a doctor or a nurse. I didn't need a formal education in aging or memory care. And Dementia with Dignity is a compilation of stories and anecdotes and all of the little tricks and techniques that my neighbors, my clients taught me over the years. And I really mean it when I say they were the masters. I was the student. They put up with me and forgave me and were gracious day after day, month after month. That out of that has come the Dawn Method and all of my work. So, nothing I say tonight can negate the fact that dementia brings loss. when dementia comes into your life, into the life of a loved one or a friend, a family member, there's incredible loss. There's much to grieve. And nothing about learning to live with fewer skills than you've had your entire life. Nothing about that is easy. I think here in America, we're quite good at living with success, living with growth, living with hope, expectations. But it's much harder for us to look at the other side of life, where we have to live with loss. And dementia brings a lot of loss, and not just financially, but also emotionally. There will be much to grieve. There always will be. When I think about the country, the United States, I know not everybody here is sitting in the United States tonight, but the cost to the nation is incredible. I take these numbers from the Alzheimer's Association. But when I see that number, most of that is costs that are borne by Medicare and Medicaid. But the really sad thing about that is look at all of those tax dollars, and they're going toward dementia care. Imagine if they were going towards enhancing people's lives rather than mitigating loss. It would be amazing to have that kind of resource available for us to put into people's lives instead of trying to help something that we cannot cure, and that's epidemic proportions. But as much as it is expensive to the nation, it is far more expensive to our families. And the thing that I realized that I saw when I was practicing elder law, I saw family after family would come to me to have an estate settled after a death. And I would realize that family had been bankrupted by one person experiencing dementia. The cost of care is so great. The other thing that nobody talks about is that all too often, in fact, usually somebody in the family has to give up a career during their highest paid years and at the point in their life where their earning determines how much Social Security they will be eligible for the rest of their lives. And so the cost to the individual caregiver is overwhelming in dollars, not even considering how much of your life you give up, how much you lose when you need to look after somebody who is losing skills. The stress, and I know I don't need to explain it to any of you, that the stress day after day, 24/7, of somebody who is becoming less able instead of more able, like a child does, is incredible and draining. My friend Roseanne lately, she just published an article in which she outlined her fears that there will not be that much left when she is finished caring for her mother. What will remain in her own life, in her own relationships? Because being a caregiver has dramatically changed everything. But, as bad as all that is, it's so hard on families and it's very expensive to the country. But it's far more difficult for the person. Because when you think about what dementia brings and takes away from a person's life, it's overwhelming too. So if you think about losing attention skills and losing language skills, both of which most of us lose to dementia, that means that every time you attempt to hold a conversation or simply interact with somebody after church, you'll have more trouble. And so dementia, because of these changes to our attention skills and language skills, will change every relationship that you have and affect every interaction every day for the rest of your life. And judgment and perception, now if you go to a neurologist for diagnosis, judgment and perception fall within those executive skills that people lose. But if I'm losing judgment perception, I'm losing the ability to perceive risk. And what that means is I'm losing the ability to keep myself safe. And if that's not enough, we know we lose memory. Everybody knows dementia means the loss of memory. It's actually the loss of memory skills, not just memory. And the way I can describe it best is the difference between normal aging and dementia is that if you're like me and you are aging and your brain is aging, you'll be becoming more forgetful. But when I can't find a word or when I don't remember something, jogging my memory, giving me a clue, will bring it back. And that's because I have an aging brain, which is very full and has been filled over decades with a lot of experience and skill and knowledge and events and language. But if I were experiencing dementia, it would be the skill of remembering that would be changing. And so trying to jog my memory or give me a clue is not going to help. And this, I think, is the greatest loss we experience with the onset of dementia, is losing the ability to retrieve knowledge from before. Because if I cannot remember what was said to me 1 minute ago, or what occurred 5 minutes ago, or yesterday, or last week, or 10 years ago, then I can't help but draw wrong conclusions and misinterpret what's actually happening in the present. So my perception, my ability to perceive reality and to correctly interpret what's going on around me in the moment will be altered, irreversibly altered. That's a tremendous loss. So dementia is costly and is uncurable. Hopefully we really are very close to curing Alzheimer's disease. Wouldn't that be incredible? But to cure dementia, we would have to cure all the diseases that can and do result in dementia. We would have to cure all of the situations, chemo, a bad reaction to anesthetic that can result in dementia, and other situations where we can't pinpoint why it began. So it's incredibly costly. But what I learned when I began to spend time with people, and I think it was the first 5 years between 2010 and 2015, I spent more time with people who were experiencing dementia than people who weren't. And most of them were living in their own homes. They hadn't been moved. And so many of the factors in their lives were still the same as they'd been for a long period of time. And what they taught me, to take you and lead you to show you the gifts of dementia, I have to first teach you two things. And the first thing I learned from my clients, the very first truth, was that they did not lose all their skills. And although when I first began spending time with people, I was watching and expecting to see people begin to behave in crazy ways, do things that were illogical. From what I'd heard about dementia, it meant that people became irrational. And so I was expecting to see a total loss, and especially because at the end stages of dementia, it certainly looks like people have lost all their skills. So let's go back and look at that slide where I'd organized how dementia affects a person. And this time I've reorganized it a little bit. And I put judgment, perception, and language together. Now that is because those three skills all fall within our rational thinking skill set. And that is something that we lose. Memory skill in our memories, that is another skill set. That is what I like to refer to as the remembering self. And I take that term from Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And the third is attention skills and attention span. And these three areas, what I found with all the people I was working with, and this actually, I was so fascinated by what I was seeing happen, and this pattern that was beginning to emerge, that I just stopped practicing law and really put my life on hold until I could get a handle on what was going on. And when I began to see the pattern, then I wanted to spend time with more people with other types of dementia and see if it held true. And so each of us will begin to lose skills in these areas. Some people will lose memory skills first. You might not see any change at all in their ability to use their attention skills. You might not see any difference at all in their ability to make a good decision, but they become really forgetful. Other people will, at the very beginning, begin to lose. There'll be changes in those attention skills. And that will be the most pronounced change, or maybe it'll be loss of rational thinking. And this is not exclusive. The different types of dementia will bring in other patterns as well, but this is the basis. And so this is the first thing I learned, and I call it the living with dementia, the skills box, because it's actually really, really good news. We lose our rational thinking skills, but we don't lose our intuitive thinking skills. And, I know in the United States, we like to call it intuition, and we like to play it down. And we consider intuition as something less than rational thinking, but it isn't. Our intuitive thinking skills are our primary thinking skills. They're the ones that our lives depend on, that we cannot function without. Rational thinking is actually secondary. Those are our secondary skills. If Daniel Kahneman, he wrote that book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Nobel Prize winning economist and psychologist, American, I think Princeton was where he taught. Beautiful book, quick read, and he calls it System 1 and System 2. The primary thinking skill set we do not lose to dementia. The remembering self and the experiential self. Now, this is what happens to us when we lose memory skills. Because if I just lose memories, I still have the ability to go back and recall some things. But with dementia, you'll see people who, what happens is we lose the ability, especially with Alzheimer's. That my Alzheimer's clients, I would see this whiteout of knowledge starting in the very nearest past. And you might not even notice somebody who doesn't recall the last 30 seconds. And then you start to notice when they're not recalling the last, say, minute, 5 minutes, and then that starts extending. And that complete loss of knowledge of the past, the inability to go into the past, has a tremendous effect on us, because not only will it change your perception of reality, but when you cannot recall the past any longer, you become unable to recognize what's familiar. And that's why it's such a marker of dementia, that people will say, I want to go home. When we lose the ability to recognize what is familiar, then we've lost the ability to know that we are in a safe place, the place we belong. We lose the ability to recognize home. And so you'll have somebody who is saying, I want to go home, when they are home. Or we misinterpret when somebody's saying, we think they're saying, I don't want to be here anymore. I really want to be there in another location. Sometimes people, especially with Alzheimer's, they'll be saying, I want to go back, and you figure out that where they want to go is actually their childhood home. But when I lose the ability to use my memory skills, then I've lost the ability to drift into the past on nostalgia, And eventually we end up living, when we have no memory skills at all, we end up living in the 3-second now. That's the interpretation. That's what the present feels like. It's 3 seconds long. So right now, that feeling is about 3 seconds in duration. And that's where we live with our experiential self. Now that self is far more important than the remembering self. That's where our souls live. That's where we live, is right here, right now, in the present. And the third dyad here of skills kept and lost, mindfulness represents the attention skills. We lose the ability to direct our attention, to redirect our attention, to maintain our attention. And so you might find your loved one becomes fixated on something and can't leave it alone. And you really wish they would forget that and forget all about it. Well, eventually they will. But these changes to our attention skills make it impossible for us to mindfully choose where to put our attention. And so that means that once we're experiencing dementia, we can't choose mindfully to be in the present. Although we are in the present because we can't leave it with our memory skills to the past. And actually it takes rational thinking to anticipate the future, plan for the future, consider the future as compared to the present. And so really we've lost the ability to go into the future either. But as Ellen Langer tells us, the mother of mindfulness, the Langer Institute of Mindfulness at Harvard, and she's lovely person. She's now in her 90s and retired. But mindlessness, the ability to be mindless, every one of us uses 2 very special skills every day, and they make our lives better and easier to live. And when we experience dementia, we do not lose those. So I'll just segue for just a moment, and because it's so hard for me to not just teach the entire Dawn method, but let me give you just a couple of tips that if when people lose rational thinking, we lose these 3 skills. Somewhere along the way, you'll notice your loved one has lost these. And these are the 3 most frustrating for caregivers. And so I always try to tell people about these first, or any time that I speak, because we as human beings, we've been using these skills for so long, we don't even recognize them. We don't know we're using them. To us, it's just natural. So cause and effect, and Tom, I think it was you that mentioned that beforehand, but cause and effect, we use that skill all the time. And I think it took me about a year with clients before I realized what was going on. And so this is what it would be. It would be my client, Mary, and me, we're going to go get groceries. And so I look out the window. I'm in Idaho and it's snowy out and it's probably blowing sideways. It's probably about 20 degrees. And so I say to Mary, and of course I'm a good caregiver, and so I make sure she can see out the window too. And I say, hey, Mary, let's both put on our winter coats because it's cold out. And if we go to get groceries, we're going to be cold. I'm explaining to her and I'm giving her a visual. So I think I'm being a really good caregiver. And Mary, she's just a really sweet soul. And she looks out the window and then she looks at me and she says, no, I'm not putting my coat on. Well, at first I thought, okay, so this is a personality change coming on and she's going to be difficult. Oh my goodness. And actually, no, that wasn't what was happening. What had happened is that was the day, or that was the week when Mary became unable to perceive cause and effect. And so for Mary, she's standing in the living room and it's 70 degrees and she's wearing a t-shirt and she's perfectly comfortable. So I suggest she put on a coat. She says, no thanks. I'm not cold. So instead of me being irritated or frustrated with her, thinking she was being difficult, or thinking something was happening that now I've got to live with this and I can't change it, I just say, well, Mary, do you mind if I take your coat too? Because you know me, I'm always cold. And she's a sweetheart. And she, of course, said, oh, go ahead, honey. We walk out the door. I'm carrying her coat. We get out on the back step. It takes 3 seconds. And Mary turns to me, she says, Judy, I'm cold. Well, that's because she couldn't perceive cause and effect. Sequencing is also something that we do almost from birth. And a sequence can be as short as 2 steps. And so in my TEDx talk, I use this example. This is another couple. And they got into a terrible, terrible fight. Talk about ruined mood for the entire day. And it all happened because he said to her, honey, would you please put on your shoes and socks? We need to get going. It's almost time. And they'd had a lovely morning, cup of coffee, everything was fine. They were actually on time for this appointment at that point. And he said, I don't know what happened. I just said, please put on your shoes and socks. I even said, please. And he says, I come back in and she's mad at me. What happened? What caused that? Well, it's sequencing. The worst part is he said, please put on your shoes and your socks. And so she had tried to start putting on a shoe. It didn't go on well on her bare feet. And then she tried putting a sock onto one of the shoes over the toe of the shoe. That didn't work well either. And so when he came back in, she's already embarrassed and frustrated. And when she looks up, she sees his face, and the first expression on his face is frustration and horror because he can't believe she doesn't know how to put on shoes and socks. Sequencing. He can't do 2 things at once anymore. So just if we understand that somebody can't take a list of directions, Mom, please grab your purse, your keys, and your coat. Let's go to town. It might have worked today. It might have worked yesterday, but maybe it's not going to work tomorrow because maybe that's when Mom's going to lose the ability to use the skill. It is rational thinking skill of sequencing. And then prioritization, that's the worst of all, because that means somebody loses the ability to prioritize ideas or actions. And the way that translates into function or into behavior is that if I'm experiencing dementia and I'm drinking a cup of coffee and I'm listening to my favorite album, and John says to me, come on, Judy, we need to go now because it's going to be 20 minutes to drive into town and we need to get to that doctor appointment. At some point, I will have lost the ability to prioritize, and I'm going to look at my coffee cup and listen to the next few bars of my music, and I'm going to turn to him and say, no, I don't want to. And that's because I've lost the ability to understand that something is important, or that there is a deadline, or that we need to hurry, or that that's dangerous, we need to stop, or this is more important than that. And once we lose that, once we lose these skills, they go away, they don't come back. Sometimes like vascular dementia, you might find your loved one is having good days and bad days, but it might be a jagged line, but it's downhill. So this is really frustrating for us as caregivers if we don't understand the skills that our loved ones are losing. And then these are the skills, the intuitive thinking skills, those primary thinking skills that we don't lose. And these are the ones that are so essential to life, and these are the good ones. And we'll talk more about them later. Because, okay, Kathy, I've already lost track of the time, so somebody needs to like share their video and tell me to stop talking when I go over. But sensory data, that's beauty. I'm picking up with all the ability I have to see as best I can see, as best as I can hear, taste, smell. Touch remains so critically important. But whatever is beautiful to me throughout my life, the music, the colors, the scenes, something like birdsong, whatever is beautiful, I get to continue experiencing that despite dementia. Now, I've lost rational thinking, so I don't have the initiative. I no longer have the ability to go get it for myself. How wonderful if we as caregivers understand that, understand what I can't do, and understand what I can do, what I can enjoy. And then feelings, I'll continue to be forever able to feel joy and love and being loved. I'll continue as long as I can see your face and hear your voice to be able to read your nonverbal communication. And if you don't know that, it's affecting mood. It is absolutely bringing negative moods and ruining companionship unless you know the skills your loved one is using. The remembering self, the experiential self, isn't it wonderful that we get to continue to experience the present? Because that's where companionship is, that's where beauty is, that's where we get the sensory stimulation and the social stimulation that our brains demand of us, always want, forever. And it's all there in the present. And then we have these mindlessness tools again. So this is what it looks like. It normally takes me about 6 hours to teach that, but this is the first truth that we need to understand. If we are going to access the gifts that are in dementia, we need to understand that dementia is only taking away some of our cognitive skills, not all. And that if you understand the skills your loved one is still using, and the ones that you should not expect them to continue to use, then you'll be able to stop inadvertently embarrassing and frustrating them all the time. And so conflict will begin to diminish and companionship begins to develop again. That was the first truth. Truth number 2. And I purposefully did not read any books on dementia care or try to learn from dementia experts during those first 5 years that I was spending time with people. And then in 2015, I sat down and wrote my first book. And then I bought, I think, 13 books from Amazon. And I found out some things. I found out that there's a stigma about dementia, which there isn't in Moscow, because in Moscow, everybody was used to Judy hauling her clients around and Judy and her clients having a wonderful time, all of, cafes, movie theaters, the Arboretum, all the parks, up and down Main Street, taking part in life. Never occurred to me there should be a stigma for just losing skills. But the other thing I found out was that everybody else, all the experts, look at dementia as a disease that has symptoms, and the symptoms are actually behaviors, and the proper term is dementia-related behaviors. And I was so surprised because I thought, well, wait a minute, we're people. Whether we begin to experience a condition, one condition or another. I mean, if I'm experiencing the condition of tooth decay, I will have emotional responses to life and people in my surroundings, just as if I didn't have that. And so if I'm experiencing the condition of dementia, I'm losing some cognitive skills. Once again, I just expect that everybody understands that losing cognitive skills is really upsetting. It's really, really upsetting to wake up and find yourself unable to do something that you could do most of your life, or to get up in the morning and go in the kitchen, your own kitchen, and go to use the coffee maker and find yourself unable to do that. The coffee maker has been there for 10 years, or to want to do a load of laundry. And that's the day you go to the washing machine, it makes no sense to you, and you can't remember how to do it. This loss of skills is not comfortable. And so to me, to hear that people are exit seeking or wandering or sundowning or combative behaviors or any of these, I just think, no, we're just talking about human beings. And if we really understood how they felt, then we'd be able to understand why they want to do whatever it is they want to do. And so to me, behaviors are the result of the emotional trauma or the emotional need, unmet needs that we experience when we begin to lose skills. So with Dawn, what I do, I created this, asked an artist to create it for me, and this is the Dawn flower. And this is a feedback loop. And it's actually a feedback loop based on Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Now, he had a pyramid, and in modern psychology and science, we've kind of debunked Abraham Maslow, but the law will teach you that there's a difference between substance and procedure. And in Abraham Maslow's case, I believe his substance, his theory was very good. We do need to have our security needs met before we can experience self-actualization, feel happy, have a sense of well-being. We really do need to feel safe. The problem is the pyramid didn't display that very well. But hey, that was 1942 when he was writing. And so let's forgive him for the pyramid. That was good. But really, it's a feedback loop. And so here with the Dawn method, what I do is I teach first, the center of everything is mood management. How come? Why? Because, no other relationship in life ever are we responsible for the mood of another person. We are only responsible for our own moods. And that is because we have rational thinking skills and memory skills. And using our memory skills and our rational thinking skills, we can understand, interpret, change, and manage and choose our own moods. Now, that means, of course, that if you're experiencing dementia, when you lose your memory skills and you lose your rational thinking skills, you have become unable to manage your own moods. And so if you're spending time with somebody who is not very happy, you won't be able to help but be happy. If you're spending time with somebody who is grieving, you will absorb the grief. If they are worried, you will absorb the worry. Now, depending on your personality and your past life experiences and your relationship between the two of you, you'll have different emotional reactions. You might react with more anger, or you might be belligerent, or you might be fearful, or you might feel guilty. And these emotions, when we're experiencing dementia, they can become embedded, and a person can learn that they are guilty, learn that they should be fearful. And so mood management is the critical first thing that we have to understand if we are spending time with a person who's experiencing dementia, if they've lost most of their rational thinking skills, if they've lost most of their memory skills. When they've lost these skills, they can't protect themselves from your moods, and they can't interpret your moods, and they can't change them, and they can't change their own. And so we can do it for them, and we can protect ourselves and them by being ever so careful about the moods we bring. And I teach a whole session on nonverbal communication and why that's so critical. Your expression, but we'll talk about that more later. Mood management is where it begins. The two sepals around mood management are also about security in confusion and security in care. The bottom line is, if I'm experiencing dementia, I will become ever more confused. And I will become ever more needful of other people to help me. The kindest thing we could possibly do for a person who's losing those skills, those abilities, who is forced to live with that future, is to teach them that they are safe, not knowing what's going on, and to teach them that they are safe, needing help with everything. And with my clients, it just made my day when a client, I'd start out with people and I'd be so carefully matching them with caregivers, and I'd create this family, this team around them that understand these principles. And then I'd be doing something one day, and I remember one day in the car, everybody's Mary, have to say Mary for HIPAA, but my client, she turns to me and we're in the car, and she can't share. She's living in the 3-second now. That's her. She has zero memory skills. And so she'll say, so where are we going when we first get in the car? And I say, oh, I thought we'd go for a scenic drive. Maybe go over to Washington State University. We can go check out the grizzly bears. They ought to be out today. It's warm and sunny. And she'd be like, oh, that sounds great. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's fun. Let's do that. Count it, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Hey, so where are we going? And then I'd tell her again, but after about the third or fourth rendition, she says, so where are we going? And then she said, oh, don't worry. You don't have to tell me. I'll just forget. I know you know, and whenever we're together, we have fun. That was the day I knew she had learned from me that she was safe being confused if she was with me. She also knew she was safe being with me because no matter what happened, I was not going to get mad at her or be horrified by what she didn't know or what she just did or said. And that whatever it was, we were going to figure out how to do it together. If she failed, we'd work it out together. We'd solve the problem together. That's what you do with somebody who's losing these skills. Now, that's the security tools, the first three. The outer four represent well-being. And, you know, if you feel secure that you're trying to navigate a daily life, you can't feel a sense of well-being for long if you can't feel successful when you try to converse with somebody, or that if you don't feel that you have control over yourself and your life to some degree, that you can't feel well-being for long if you don't feel like you have something to offer, something of value to give in your relationships, and that you are valued in your relationships. And then secure future, that's about security symbols. We all have them. It's a whole topic. I teach a whole class on it. I won't try to go into it here, but that's the dawn flower, and that represents the emotional needs we experience when we're experiencing dementia. Okay, so what do we have here on the screen here? This is actually exactly the same information as a previous screen, except I've organized it this time for you to interact with your rational thinking skills. The previous screen was me asking you to use your intuitive thinking skills. It's the intuitive shows us relationships, whereas the rational thinking skills take things apart, are divisive, and your intuitive thinking skills might put things together. But when we understand the emotional needs of dementia, then we can begin supporting companionship, and we support mood. And that is critical to know. So that brings us to the third truth, which is that there are gifts. Now, how do you access it? And this truth, the bottom line is that if we resist something, we will miss out on the gifts. There is no way in life to get the benefits of something we resist. You have to actually stop resisting and go with it. And, you know, to be a caregiver, most of us, it caught us totally by surprise, unawares, and it is costly, and you are losing much while you are a caregiver. On the other hand, there's no way to escape for most of us. And it's not something you can just walk away from. You can't leave it. The only way through, the only way to go ahead is, the only way out is through, is how I think about it. And I learned this my own self in life through dealing with physical pain. For almost 2 decades, I suffered from often weekly migraines, where I would be completely incapacitated for 3 days and 2 nights. And gradually, as the years passed, it took over 16 years to be able to fix my neck injuries and find out why I was getting these migraines and cure them. But once I realized that the best way for me to experience the least amount of pain was to stop resisting, then my life changed, and I was able to get my life back on track. But you know how you know you're resisting is if in your mind you're saying to yourself, I can't do this anymore. This isn't right. This shouldn't be this way. That's how you know you're resisting. And really the way to experience any of the benefits that are there for us is through allowing what is occurring in the present to happen, just being there in the present. So now let me just take you really quickly through those skills that we retain. Because these intuitive thinking skills, this is what your loved one is doing. If you are spending time with somebody who's experiencing dementia, you are spending time with somebody who is incredibly intuitive and becoming more intuitive as time goes by. Because our intuitive thinking skills allow us to receive all the sensory stimuli that our senses are still able to absorb. It's rational thinking that helps us interpret it, understand it, but we receive it. And we feel all of our own feelings, even if we cannot express it or name it or explain it. It's still there. Even if we have been given a drug so that we can't act out and be combative or put other people at risk or ourselves at risk, we feel the feeling. The feelings are there. And in addition, because we still have experiential learning, we are also constantly reading our companions' nonverbal communication. And so it's critically important to understand that most of us have our default expression. And most of us, the default expression on our faces is a frown of concentration or a frown of worry. But if you're spending time with someone who's experiencing dementia, you are constantly telling them that you are not happy to be with them, not pleased with what they're doing or what they just said, or that you're concerned about something and they should be too, if your default expression is a frown. So these we continue to use these skills when we're experiencing dementia. And it's because we have those intuitive skills. Then we have the experiential self as well. Now, the experiential self, if I don't have memory skills, so the past or memories of the past, daydreaming is not occurring. And I also am losing my rational thinking skills, so I'm not worrying about the future constructively or with detail. I might just have a sense of dread. If I'm not being distracted by the past or the future, I am fully in the present. And it's so important for us to understand that that's where our loved ones are living, and they are not distracted. They are more aware of what's going on around them and how we feel than ever before. Then there's those mindlessness tools, and I'm just going to whip through this quickly because I want to go on to our gifts. But it's automatic thinking scripts and muscle memory that allow us as people to not have to use memory and rational thinking to do every little task we do every day. It's automatic thinking script that helps that you use when you unload that dishwasher you've been using for the last 10 years. It's muscle memory that guides you from bed to bathroom and back to bed in the dark when you wake up in the night. And so these skills make it much more comfortable, and they prolong our ability to function. And that's if we are not getting interrupted, not interrupted by a change in location. John and I just moved into a new home, and for 6 to 8 weeks last summer, we were learning new automatic thinking scripts and muscle memory. And we were crankier, tired. We were exhausted at the end of the day because every little thing we did required memory and rational thinking. So in the context of dementia, it is so wonderful if you can keep your loved one in the same location as long as possible and be very thoughtful about when and if you do need to have them move. But also never quiz, never interrupt a person's script or their muscle memory by quizzing them, because without memory skills and without rational thinking, you'll break that and they won't be able to rebuild it. Okay, so if these are the skills we keep, then what are the gifts? Because the gifts are within what we keep. And the gifts are for both parties. The gifts are for the caregiver and for the person who's experiencing dementia. And I'm going to just, with 5 slides, go through these 5. And I think we are at 7 p.m. right now. So one by one, beauty. We keep our intuitive thinking skills. Everything that was ever beautiful to me. And beauty is so personal. Something might be beautiful to one person and not the next. Be sure be careful that you are being the beauty detective. You are finding those songs. There's half a dozen songs that your loved one, that will bring her feet to tapping, and she'll start singing out loud and your head moving. And there are songs that move our hearts and lift our hearts from earlier in life. Find those songs, put them on an MP3 player, get a pair of headphones, because we need headphones in order to absorb music properly. Look at all the research in musicandmemory.org online, Dan Cullen's work. Look up on YouTube that little video, Alive Inside Henry, and you'll see the magic of music. But it's not just music. There's YouTube videos of nature. There's music videos of orchestras and entire productions, opera. It's all right there for free. And our brains are just like our stomachs. If I'm hungry, my stomach will tell me I'm hungry until I fill it. If our brains are not receiving enough sensory stimulation, we will not be comfortable. We will be restless. We will be wandering. We will be exit seeking. We will be cranky. We will be very uncomfortable. And so if your loved one is sundowning, or if your loved one is having a difficult time of the day and can't sleep at night, start thinking about what's beautiful to them. What's their beauty? What colors? What nature videos? What TV shows? And fill their day with beauty so that you fill their minds with sensory stimulation. Beauty will lift your soul. And if you are looking for beauty and then you enjoy it with your loved one, it will be respite. You can get a few moments of respite, but to spend a little bit of time enjoying beauty in the present that's where the best things of life are. That's the first gift. Second, we've already talked a little about mood management, but your loved one, if they've lost memory skills and rational thinking skills, they cannot change their mood. Ask your friends and family, begin to think about what your default facial expression is and develop a peaceful, happy smile. When I began doing that with my clients, all of a sudden, all of them were happier. And it took me probably the first 3 years to figure out that my default expression was a frown, and that every time I walked into the presence of somebody who was experiencing dementia, I made them feel either guilty, worried, belligerent, combative. They were bothered by my frown. You choose the mood, and you can use your positive moods to change theirs. There's such a gift there for us as caregivers, because when we smile, it releases endorphins and we feel better. Even if you don't feel like smiling, smile, because it will make you feel better too. I think that was the greatest gift I received from my friends, my clients who were all experiencing dementia, was they taught me that since I've got memory skills and rational thinking, I get to choose my mood all the time. That was the most freeing knowledge of my life. Dementia takes away our memories. Well, not everything in life is wonderful to recall. Not everything is good. And I have counseled with wives and with husbands and said, the good thing is that eventually your loved one, your spouse, will forget that terrible thing that has been ruining your marriage all these years. It will be gone and you will be forgiven by forgetfulness. And I've watched it happen where relationships are healed because of forgetfulness. On the other hand, the other side of this, one of my clients just about a year ago, family I was teaching, and my caregivers were taking care of, her husband had dementia. She came to me one day, she came to class and she said, Judy, she's in tears, and she said, my husband, he has suddenly remembered this horrible abuse from his childhood, and now he can't forget it. And every day, time after time, he keeps coming to me and telling me this, and it's breaking my heart. I had no idea. And he just can't let it go. He can't let it go. What do I do? So I said, well, what are you doing right now? What do you do when he tells you this memory, this stories? And she said, well, I tell him, that was then, this is now. Let's not talk about that. That was before. It's not true now. It's gone away. But he keeps coming back, and he comes back, and he's crying, and I'm crying, and we're just miserable. It's horrible. And I said, well, okay, well, look, you need to help him forget. So you need, and this is essentially his validation. And I said, just next time he comes to you, take his hands, say, oh, please come sit with me. And sit on the couch, look him in the eye, hear his story, let him tell you. Cry with him, love him. And then when he feels heard, then you can, and I said, you've got to think of something that you can be grateful for. And all she and I could think of was, she could say, darling, I love you so much. I am so, so sorry. I'm so, so sorry. But I'm so glad you're with me now. I am so glad she is gone. And that helped. And it took a day or two, but then the memory was gone for him. It had been validated. His grief, his pain was heard. He was healed. And so this is working with the skills. This is working with what dementia brings us instead of resisting it. I think the second best, after learning that I could manage my own moods, was understanding that I can choose to escape my worries, my problems for minutes. If I don't have hours, I can escape for minutes and I will feel better. You know, the truth is, what do we worry about? We worry about what's already happened. It's happened and it's finished. There's no way to change it. It happened. And then we worry about things that are happening. They're still happening, and we're really concerned about the outcome. And then we worry about things that we think might start happening in the future. Well, I learned from my clients, from my friends, that I could choose to turn all of that off and join them in the present, where there wasn't a future and there wasn't a past. And when I did that, boy, we had fun. We found all kinds of beautiful things. I mean, sometimes you just are sitting on a park bench and you look down and there is some incredible beauty right there at your feet that you would have never noticed if you hadn't turned off thinking about the past and thinking about the future. The last one is this being able to teach somebody that they're safe. You know, when you think about it, our entire lives, we are learning that we are not safe. I love the Bible verse that talks about our Heavenly Father holding the sparrow in his hand, and he loves us so much, he knows us so well, he even knows the hairs of our head, the number of the hairs on our head. Our lives teach us that we're at risk. And yet, here comes dementia. Come into your life. You're a loved one. You can help that person learn that they are safe. And I've done it with my clients. I've seen it happen. It is the most beautiful thing in the world to be able to take somebody from the onset of dementia through death and watch them at first so afraid, so angry, so frustrated, so fearful, and watch them become so comfortable and begin to say, oh, it's okay. I know I'm with you. When I'm with you, everything's okay. That's all right, don't worry. And then you watch them be able to mend relationships with family members and then greet death in a comfortable, beautiful way. There really are gifts. And you know, I can't make it any briefer than I've taken the full hour, I think. I can't make it any shorter. People aren't simple. We're not machines. We're not even like computers. Our brains are actually more like libraries, and that's why they get so full as we live life and fill them up with experiences and knowledge. And that's why it gets harder for us to remember things with natural aging. But if you work with dementia, there's an incredibly beautiful, intuitive world that this fast-paced society does not encourage us or teach us how to access or enjoy. It's there. and your loved one is experiencing dementia, your clients, if you're working in a facility, they will take you there. You can join them. You have to choose to. But it's an intuitive thing. And so I'll close here because I really want us to be able to take some questions. And my apologies for going long. As always. So I'll take my screen off share, shall I?
Yeah, go ahead. So thank you so much, Judy. We really appreciate
Here we
it. I apologize for rushing you at all. You have so much wisdom and knowledge, and we're really grateful you are here today. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. If you do, we'd prefer you use the chat just because we have so many people that have joined us today. So if anyone does have questions and wants to throw it in the chat box again on the bottom middle part of your screen, we'll read them out loud for Judy. But while we wait for that, I just want to let you guys know, our time tonight is pretty much up, but Judy will be available starting in January, twice a month. She's going to be offering a Q&A session just for caregivers, and honestly, anyone else who wants to join that has a question. So that information will be in our January Centered News. So just look out for those dates in the Zoom login. And if you're not on our Centered News and you want to be on our mailing list, all you have to do is give us a call, or you can email fcgc@mercycare.org. And I know Judy would love to answer your questions.
Absolutely. Yep.
So Judy, I do see there's a question here for you. Kathy, do you want to read that for us?
Sure. So the question is, how do you approach a caregiver who perceives working with somebody living with dementia as a burden or challenge, as opposed to the ability to help someone live independently?
Okay, I need an hour to properly answer that. But most of us, I mean, let's be honest, most of us begin feeling burdened, challenged, like, oh no, this cannot be part of my life. I can't believe this is happening. No, this isn't real. Most of us resist. And it takes education. I mean, we really need mentors. We need people who have walked the path. We need somebody to tell us it's okay to leave the world of absolute correctness. The world, I mean, everything in our lives, American culture is built around memory skills. The entire school system, everything you've ever done since kindergarten was designed to test your memory. We get rewarded for memory skills, correctness, accuracy, rational thinking. Who gets the money? Lawyers get the money, surgeons get the money. There's rational thinking being rewarded. But there's so much more to life. So it's really hard for us as Americans in our culture to suddenly be working with somebody, living with somebody, spending time with somebody who's losing the ability to be correct, who's losing the ability to remember, who's becoming more and more able to enjoy beauty, who needs to slow down and be in the present. So a lot of us go kicking and screaming. And, you also have to recognize that some of us are more naturally equipped to begin the caregiver path and travel it than others. So for some of us, it's more difficult at the beginning. And for some people, some of us just can't do it. And that's okay too. So I hope that kind of sort of answered, and please email me. That sounded like a question that had a more personal issue to discuss.
And Judy, can you remind us what your email is? I know you had it up on the screen.
I'm at judy@thedawnmethod.com.
Well, I'm sure there are lots of other questions. I know, again, Judy has so much experience and knowledge, and we're really excited this next year to learn more from her. So we're grateful she's part of the Mercy team now, and we're looking forward to our future and continuing to grow. So I just want to thank each and every one of you guys for joining us tonight. We're so grateful that you took the time to be here, and we hope you all have a Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year. So thank you, and here's to another 5 years.
Yes, thank you all.